A few people who identified themselves as clairvoyants reached out to us after watching the videos on our channel. We worked with them to create the first simulations of the threshold event. After documenting their visions, we analyzed what they had discerned, or believed they had discerned, in the obscure haze of the near future. Perhaps they are all mistaken, and the vivid images they communicated are no more than the fruit of their imaginations. Not a single image of the threshold event was repeated. Everyone saw entirely different pictures. In the next few posts, we will reveal what they have seen. Today, it is the first one. We would never have conducted these experiments if we had known what we would discover. Please, watch, like, subscribe, and share. Large city in Asia, 1513, mid-July, 2025. Hannah, a journalist with one of the TV news channels, is in the company minibus on her way to shoot her evening report. Worn out by the hot July weather, she is half dozing on the front seat, to the right of the driver, opening her eyes every now and then and automatically noting their current location. The cameraman is sitting behind her, quietly droning into his phone. The white minibus crosses the river and merges into the stream of vehicles slowly moving through the city. The oncoming lanes are almost empty of traffic.
There's probably an accident somewhere up ahead. The usual story when you're in a hurry.
The old driver grumbles petulantly. He casts a rapid glance at Hannah.
You get a spot of quiet sleep. We'll be crawling along for another 40 minutes.
Thanks. I'm feeling so drowsy somehow, I really will take a little doze.
Before finally dozing off, she casts a quick glance at the panoramic view of the river that unfolds in their direction of travel. She does this just in time to see a small pleasure boat, perched vertically on its stern, rapidly sinking into the water.
Look, that pleasure boat's sinking.
She cries out spontaneously, jabbing her finger toward the river and lowering the side window to get a better view. The driver brakes slightly, although they are traveling at no more than 20 kilometers an hour in any case. From behind her, Hannah hears the cameraman muttering as he frantically switches on his camera.
I hope they've got life jackets. The water's warm, some passing boat will pick them up in 5 or 6 minutes, but I'll call the lifeguards anyway.
The young woman suddenly stops talking and throws her hands up in a reflex response of horror. She can clearly see the outline of a gigantic shadow swimming underwater at high speed away from the sunken pleasure boat. The dark silhouette, which from a distance resembles an immense torpedo, is slithering rapidly northward, and sailing unhurriedly down the river toward it is another boat. Putting her right hand over her mouth, wide open in horror, Hannah watches the shadow race directly toward the boat, covering the last few dozen meters in a sudden, lightning-fast spurt. An instant later, a blow of colossal strength flings the bow of the boat up into the air. The small vessel freezes for a moment, at an angle of almost 45 degrees to the surface, and then plumps back down heavily into the water. As this happens, a dozen figures are sent tumbling overboard. Even through the rumble of the crowded highway, Hannah can hear the feeble cries of the people floundering in the river. Suddenly, one after another, the little figures disappear from the surface, as if something is ravenously sucking them down under the water. Absolutely stupefied, Hannah sees the boat shudder at another incredibly powerful blow against the side of its hull below the waterline, and then start rapidly sinking. 30 seconds after the first collision, only small pieces of wreckage are left floating on the surface.
I see it, that thing's swimming upriver.
The cameraman suddenly cries out in a falsetto voice from the back of the minibus. The trembling of his voice leaves absolutely no doubt that he is also horrified. Startled by another person's fear, Hannah recovers her composure slightly and suddenly feels a metallic, salty taste in her mouth. She hastily touches her lips and sees a large red drop of blood on her finger. She has bitten her lower lip so hard that it is bleeding. As it intensifies, the stinging sensation has a sobering effect, and a plan of action instantly takes shape in her head.
Minjun, we have to stay level with that thing all the time. Please swing over into the opposite way. It's almost empty. And put your foot down. This is an emergency, Minjun, and we have to keep reporting the situation as it develops in order to warn people.
After a brief moment of hesitation, the driver makes up his mind and swings the wheel to the left. The minibus goes flying out into an oncoming lane and starts picking up speed. The cameraman also receives rapid instructions.
June, put the camera away. We can't broadcast directly to air from it. Start shooting that thing on your phone and download the video to the newsroom every couple of minutes. They can edit it together there. Only please steady yourself to stop the image jolting about and keep zooming in regularly.
While the minibus speeds northwards and the cameraman starts filming on his smartphone, Hannah contacts the newsroom and tells them in brief what happened on the river a couple of minutes earlier. After rapidly outlining the situation, she asks them to give her an urgent breaking news slot with the 30-second video that the cameraman has already sent. She also asks them to announce on air that all traffic on the waterways must be halted and pleasure boats and commercial vessels should be moored. Leaving it to the newsroom to contact the municipal authorities in order to arrange the measures she has proposed, the young woman ends her call. Meanwhile, the underwater shadow keeps swimming northward, slithering along sinuously in a serpentine fashion, not moving down deep into the water, but not emerging onto the surface either. On the bends in the highway, where there is a view of a broad expanse of water, the driver casts a couple of rapid glances at the river.
It's 10 or 12 meters long, approximately like a city bus.
He eventually hisses through his teeth. After a short pause, he continues somberly.
It's racing northward so eagerly, maybe some kind of noise is attracting it.
Possibly it attacked the pleasure boat and the other boats so aggressively. Perhaps it's attracted by the sound of motors.
The young woman replies, agreeing with the driver's observation. After a moment's thought, in a quiet voice, she asks a question, to which she already knows the answer, but is afraid to say it out loud.
What if there's something especially noisy further upstream that's attracting that thing?
Without waiting for an answer to her question, she feverishly calls the newsroom again.
We know where it's headed. That's where an evacuation must be declared in the first instance. It's swimming toward the river harbor. Put the news out on air urgently. The first priority is to get everyone off the water there.
But the warning is too late. Bow waves abruptly swirl up above the shadow as the dark silhouette suddenly surges forward even more rapidly. Trying not to fall behind, the minibus also accelerates, and at the next bend in the highway, the riverport comes into view less than half a kilometer ahead. Hannah sees several pleasure boats being hastily secured at their moorings, but she realizes that they simply won't have time to evacuate everybody. The distance between the port and the shadow dwindles rapidly as the thing hurls itself forward in a final sprint. People on the riverboats and the quayside, caught up in the emergency evacuation, finally spot the dark underwater silhouette, hurtling directly at the vessel still mooring. Hannah hears their wails of terror, muted by the distance. When the actual moment of the attack arrives, the minibus is only 100 meters away from the port, and the TV crew in it watches what is happening in stunned silence. One of the riverboats, which hasn't reached its berth in time, instantaneously crumples up as if it is made of paper, practically shearing in two. The air is filled with the howls of dozens of people who instantly find themselves in the water. A few seconds later, a second vessel is tossed up in the air, then cumbrously subsides, listing heavily to starboard, and starts rapidly sinking. The wailing metamorphoses into the bestial howling of people who realize the appalling fate in store for them. A devastating blow sets a third vessel shuddering. The quayside is a scene of utter chaos. The water seethes and bubbles red. Slithering along beneath the hideous mishmash of metal, plastic, and bodies that are still alive, the dark shadow apparently performs a role in the water. For a few seconds, a dark olive-colored snout emerges at the surface. More than a meter long, it seems to consist entirely of gigantic, toothy jaws. Hannah turns away, unable to continue watching this ghastly spectacle. Behind her in the minibus, the cameraman, pale-faced in horror, is recording everything on his phone, with his hands trembling. 30 seconds later, the howling dies away and is replaced by a profound, hideous silence. Wiping away the tears that have sprung to her eyes, the young woman asks the cameraman to send the newsroom a 60-second video of the devastating primordial ferocity of this onslaught. 2 minutes later, the entire country, absolutely stunned, is watching this footage on air. The broadcast is accompanied by a request for people to contact the newsroom if they have any information at all about what is happening. 5 minutes after that, a man calls the newsroom, introduces himself as a paleontologist, and says that the creature's snout and its size match the features of Deinosuchus, a gigantic crocodile that became extinct in the late Cretaceous period. He emphasizes that fossil remains of this species have never been found in this region, and there is absolutely no way this creature could have lived here. A few minutes after that, a newsflash goes out on air, stating that over the last 4 hours, the level of oxygen in the air has been rising steeply. At the present moment, it has already reached 24%, a prodigious rise of 4 percentage points. No one can provide any explanation for this phenomenon. It is quite simply physically impossible. After watching the news flash on her tablet, Hannah realizes that what is happening is far beyond abnormal. Recovering her composure slightly, she tries to analyze the situation and calculate the next steps to take. But her thoughts stubbornly continue revolving around the recent attack, and the howls of the victims echo inside her head. She is distracted from her distressing thoughts by a call from the newsroom.
Hannah, please can you make your way up to a point somewhere higher? We need to shoot the city from above, or at least the area near the river.
The production editor speaks haltingly and his breathing is labored.
We're getting lots of messages about fires right across the city. It's probably because of the increased oxygen level. We want to show a panoramic view from above if that's possible. Can you get up to the viewing platform on the mountain?
Okay, I'll go up, but not in the minibus. The traffic around the port is at a total standstill and the mountain is jammed solid. I'll go on foot.
The young woman says, as usual, formulating a plan in the course of a conversation, and ends the call. Then she turns to her companions.
June, I have to take a panoramic video shot of the city from above, from that viewing platform on the mountain. I'll shoot it on my phone so I won't need the camera. We'll leave the minibus here at the side of the road. You can stay here with it too, or try to get home.
I'm not going anywhere. Get back as soon as you can. I'll wait here for you.
The driver is instinctively reluctant to abandon the minibus and preferring to stay.
I'll go with you,
says the cameraman. He is pale, but his voice has a determined ring to it. The two of them start their ascent. Although the gradient is rather steep, Hannah feels no fatigue or shortness of breath as they move upward. The thought occurs to her that this is because of the high level of oxygen in the air. After about 30 minutes, they reach the observation platform. The production editor was right. There are small fires right across the northern part of the city, near the river. The city really is burning. Hannah shoots a panoramic view and sends the footage to the newsroom. Literally just 5 seconds later, the production editor calls her again. The situation is deteriorating.
All contact with the rest of the world has been lost. We don't even know what's happening in other cities in this country. Cell phone communication in the city is still functioning, but it's expected to collapse at any moment. A few minutes ago, a man called and told us he was a YouTube content creator. He said that what's happening resembles an anomalous temporal shift, but he also said it's impossible to explain scientifically. He said whole eras of time have been dislocated, and now we're observing phenomena that correspond to various different periods of the past. He mentioned the Carboniferous and Cretaceous periods. He also surmised that the plant and animal life of those periods could make a reappearance. Perhaps that gigantic crocodile and the sudden spike in the oxygen level were only the first manifestations, and he kept mentioning some kind of threshold event. The worst thing is that we don't know if this is happening on a local or global scale.
The connection suddenly breaks off. Calls can't get through anymore. With tears in her eyes, Hannah turns round and looks at the cameraman. He is kneeling down with his eyes closed and his hands clasped together, monotonously swaying from side to side as he prays. The young woman calls his name so that they can go back to the minibus, where they can at least lock themselves in. But the cameraman doesn't hear her and carries on with his regular swaying. It suddenly turns dark. Gigantic blue-black clouds are advancing from the south at an incredible speed, completely blocking off any view of the sky. Hannah wearily moves away from the cameraman, sits down on an observation bench, and looks at the city. She instinctively realizes that there is no longer any point in going anywhere else. From somewhere in the thick bushes, lower down the slope, she hears loud whooping and the padding of gigantic paws. The sound of shrill snarling reaches her ears from a thicket of trees off to one side. She carries on looking at the city through the tears clouding her eyes. There is no more fear or horror, only bewilderment, and a painful sense of hurt that everything is ending like this. She hears a loud crack behind the bench, and the wind carries an unpleasant, musky odor to her nostrils. Something noisily draws in air, and then slowly approaches the bench. All she can hear is the scraping of claws on stone. The cameraman's muttering abruptly breaks off, and a few seconds later, something huge stops behind her and sniffs loudly. The last sound to be registered by her fading hearing is the harrowing wail of an air raid siren, rippling out in waves over the blazing city. The stakes have never been higher. Join us as we delve into the secrets of the Threshold event. Let us know if you would like to see how the Threshold event might unfold in your location. Like, subscribe, and watch as we race against time to uncover the truth. Stay with us and stay safe for as long as you can.